All right, good afternoon, everyone. Participants are joining. We'll give them just another couple seconds and then we'll get started. All right, I'm seeing people trickle in. I think we are good. Good afternoon, all. My name is Ryan Smith. I'm the specialist here at NAC in the Training Technical Assistance Division, working with Jen Nolte, PCA and HCC and Relations Specialist here. Welcome to our New Leader Institute, our third module, getting to know you, the HRSA staff priorities and alignment opportunities. I'm going to take just a couple minutes before we introduce our HRSA guests to cover some housekeeping items and discuss a little bit about what we plan to do today. So as you're all aware, these discussions are being recorded. The small group discussions that will happen will not be recorded, so feel free to share freely there. We ask that you manage your own cameras, be mindful of audio, and appropriately take care of yourselves during the session. As always, too, should you have the chance, go ahead and take a moment to update your name to reflect your organization and state so that folks on the call know who else is on. And feel free, as we come through the session today, to use the chat feature and the raise your hand feature should you have questions. And as always, reach out to me for any technical or administrative needs you have for the New Leader Institute. And with that, I will start us off today. Wanted to open up the floor before we introduce our HRSA folks to get thoughts about your implementation activity from the previous session, get feedback about what you're thinking about today's session and what you're looking forward to. Would love to open the floor for discussion and hear from our Institute participants. What are you hoping to learn today? When everyone goes at once, it gets overwhelming. So, all right. You feel free to put that in the chat as well. Again, this is the third of 6 modules, so we're halfway there. And today's session, again, is going to focus on our HRSA partners. We wanted to make sure that we created and convened an audience for questions and answers around expectations from HRSA and the specific ways that as new PCA and HCC and leaders, you can partner with HRSA for the sake of the health center mission. So with that, I will go ahead and introduce to you Tracy Orloff. She is the Director of Strategic Partnerships in the Office of Quality Improvement for the Bureau of Primary Healthcare and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. That's a mouthful. Tracy, I will turn it over to you and let you kick us off. Thank you.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. We're really excited to all be here with you today for these 2 hours together. And in particular, it's been a good 2 or 3 years since we've been able to be together to welcome some of our newest PCA and HCCN leaders. So we're really excited to have some time with you, and that this is an important part of your curriculum as you orient with each other and with us. So, and in our 2 hours together, the first hour, we're going to be as you'll see, we're joined by our BIPIC leadership, and so they'll be talking to you a lot about our roles and structure in our different offices and how we work with you and the importance of that relationship with your organizations. The second hour will be focused on the strategic partnerships. Our staff will all be here with you, and we'll be digging down on a lot of programmatic issues together. So we're very excited. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya Bowers, our Deputy Associate Administrator for the Bureau of Primary Healthcare, which I know a lot of you all know already. And she'll take us through, and everybody will introduce themselves along the way. So with that, Tanya, it's all yours.
Great, thank you, Tracy. Really great to be here with everyone this afternoon, or perhaps morning. So it's terrific to be here, and thanks, NAC, for hosting all of us. I think these are really valuable opportunities, and I'm just super happy that our leadership team and others from across HRSA can be here with you today. We have a ton of content to go through. I think for many or most, if not all of you, a lot of this, at least what I'm going to talk through, is probably information you're already familiar with, or perhaps give it a little bit of a different twist today. And then we're going to invite each one of the offices, of course, to spend a couple of minutes talking about their office and their priorities and what they, how they can work with you. And so as I said, I'm going to kick it off, and then I'm just going to start to transition it to some of the other leaders here today. So we can go to the next slide, thanks. Great. So again, this is our mission for the HRSA Health Center program, our sort of guiding star on how we focus our energy. It really does guide our work with health centers, and clearly is consistent with health centers' mission as well, is to ensure that we're improving, or our work always improves, tries to improve the health of the nation's underserved and vulnerable populations. And so you'll see that all of the work that we do drives towards this mission. And we've built a lot of our priorities and the other things that I'm going to talk about really toward that end. We can go to the next slide. I don't really need to speak to you about these as well, but it's also very grounding, I think, especially as we start to think about some of the work we've been doing with COVID recently. Going out and speaking to a variety of folks over the last couple of weeks, really going back to these and recognizing how valuable these sort of critical fundamentals of what health centers do every day in their communities, what they're expected to do under this program, but also how this is reflected in their work under COVID. So just spending a minute there, thinking about how important it is. They were absolutely called upon by the administration because they serve high need areas, and they're serving vulnerable populations that they really wanted to make sure had equitable access to the resources we had available. They were really the voice of communities, so that patient-directed services. Absolutely, they were the voice in their community, making sure that health centers were providing access to vaccines and other supplies where they were needed and how they were needed. So that was important. I think in terms of looking at the services that they're providing, really adjusting quickly over time to what the landscape looked like locally, making those changes as they needed to, and the services and how they were providing them. I believe under COVID, health centers found a lot of new patients. They were able to maintain and create access for patients across the board. And what's really important is one of the things I think we've learned with the success of COVID over the last last 18 months, let's just say, in particular with the vaccine rollout and everything since then, is that cost was not a barrier. And that's absolutely aligned with what health centers do, that the ability to pay for a service is not a barrier to receiving it. And COVID was absolutely, I think, the case overall, is that making sure that that access to vaccines and all of the other supplies that we were able to donate, that we were able to provide, absolutely was essentially making sure that health centers could deliver on those. And then finally, building the partnerships locally that I think are part of what health centers do every day, but really building on those partnerships under their COVID activities, again, made them absolute essential providers in their communities in order to really successfully address the pandemic early on, and then throughout the entire last 2.5 years we've been living under this. You can go to the next slide. I'm racing through this because we've got so much content, and this is all should be a review for everyone, hopefully. A little bit about our organizational structure. We still have 5 offices, and you'll hear about each one of these offices today from the leadership. And so I won't spend a lot of time talking about that. We also have a division of workforce management that is our internal operational arm, really working with us to make sure that we're successful. They do engage with the external world, especially to support some of our transformational efforts that we're going through, we're undertaking right now, and to make sure we're successful there. They also are really leading our engagement with external partners related to speaking engagements and other activities to support us being able to go out and engage with you directly and locally. But I won't spend a lot of time on this. Jim would be, normally Jim would be here doing this, but he is still, he's completing his CDC experience right now. And so next time this will be him doing this instead of myself. You can go to the next slide. So spending a couple minutes on this, there's a lot of words on the page, but really important that these are our priorities for this year, next year, and probably into 2024, because they're so important in grounding what we do. And you'll see that the work that we do really does fit into one or more of these priority areas, and that we will use them as sort of as our grounding for the work that we do going into the future. The first area, the priority, is to strengthen health centers and support them in their to improve basically their performance and their operations. For all intents and purposes, it's really about strengthening the overall aspect of the health center, whether it's to support their workforce, to help to build off of the success of the response and to COVID, and then any future preparedness activities. And so really about strengthening the internal operations and performance of health centers. The second area is really about advancing innovation and quality models of care, high value models of care. So really looking at new ways to deliver care, really pressing on that innovation area. And we're really moving in that direction with a lot of new activities that we're doing, including a quality improvement fund. You'll also see that we'll be spending a lot more time talking about value-based care as the healthcare landscape starts to turn more in that direction. And as I mentioned, a lot more in the area of innovation. The third area is really around how do you expand the reach of the program to areas of high need across the country. I look at this, as we've mentioned it in several other settings, is really go wide and go deep. So it's really about looking at where there are areas that are not served by the health center model of care, and trying to encourage and trying to build out to make sure that those communities, those populations have access to this model of care. But it's also supporting health centers to provide more services to the communities and populations they're already serving. And finding new ways to be able to build out partnerships at the local level to be able to build off and expand the reach of the program. We go to the next slide, please. So I want to just do a review, spend a moment really talking about our reach goals. We spent about 2 years really trying to flesh out these goals to make sure that we could deliver for all of our stakeholders and partners to be able to really focus our work and our support of health centers so that they can be as successful as possible in providing care under this program. And these you'll see is grounding a lot of the work that we do internally, which then were used to inform our own priorities. And then ultimately we're used to a large degree to also help us look at how we can, our own internal operational structure to make sure that we are really organized in a way that best supports our ability to provide the best service to our grantees and to our stakeholders overall. And so we really did reorganize ourselves most recently. I know there's a lot of questions about that, and I think that's why this is really important, is that we did reorganize ourselves to create an operating model that really does align with how we can best deliver on these goals and our priorities, so we can provide the best service possible to our grantees to help support them to be successful in these areas, as well as under our priorities. And so you'll hear more about that, and understand that our commitment is really to customer service and customer engagement. It is one of the highest priorities for us right now, and recognizing that as we go through a variety of transitions in how we're organizing and operating ourselves, that we need to make sure that we're actively communicating with all of you and with our grantees, so that you understand how to best engage with us and get the answers that you need to your questions. And so we are in a process change now. We are changing a lot of different ways that we do that. And so I know there's lots of questions about it, and we can certainly spend time answering those questions. But I think you'll get a lot of information about that as the offices start to go deeper into what they are doing individually and then collectively to support our engagement with grantees and yourselves. So with that, I will turn it over. I believe, I'm not even sure who's next. So if we can go to the next slide, please. And then the next slide, I could look at myself, I guess. Great, Erna.
Thank you, Tanya. So it's a pleasure to be in conversation with you all today. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing and the work that you will do. I will center your understanding of the Office of Health Center Investment Oversight by turning your attention to our purpose statement. Please forgive because I will read it and then add a little more color, if you will, to the purpose statement. Our purpose being creating a measurable and lasting impact on health outcomes, health equity, and health center program performance. We think of our office as occupying this shared accountability space with a specific focus on our attention to the supplemental awards. The evolution of our operating model, I believe, would be fair to say that, in the same way we describe health centers caring for the whole person, the Bureau is nicely positioned to care for or support the whole health center, and having the particular investment office pay additional intentional attention to the supplemental funds and performance and accountability is one way of doing that. The investment office considers health equity our North Star. I'll turn to my deputy and ask that she introduce herself and then unpack for you the organizational structure of the investment office and the why behind we're organized the way we're organized.
Thanks, Erna. Hi, I'm Katie Ballinger. Nice to meet you all. And just start with, as we embarked on this new office, we really wanted to, leverage our staff talents and specialize to be able to provide that best customized service, focus on the quality and performance areas with health centers. And so we've established, so to the right side of your screen, 4 investment management lanes of work that are really specialized to provide programmatic oversight and help health centers get toward the outcomes intended on those awards. We named the lanes very generally because, as we know, we don't know what investment will come next on our plates as the budget process goes. So we kind of named them generally, and we can have a new name if a new one comes our way too. So we're really flexible with how we design our oversight and assign the specialization of our teams. As you can see, we have over 4,500 awards that we oversee in our office across all health centers that are funded and lookalikes, because we have some of the COVID awards in our office as well. Our 4 areas are clinical performance improvement. The main emphasis right now on that is our hypertension awards, infrastructure improvement, which is actually a very big lane, dollar signs around all of our capital awards and oversight. Emergent health response is where we have all of our non-capital COVID awards centered, and then service expansion. Right now, the only active award we have in there are our PCHIP or ending the HIV epidemic awards. Our staff, the size of the staff that support each lane varies based on the number of awardees, the number of grants. So you'll see a specialized team, a smaller team in the smaller service expansion and the clinical performance space right now, but those could grow as we get more in our office. So we also have an internal strategic services department that helps us across and ensure our best data and technology communications resources are there for us. So with that, I will turn back to Erna so she can talk a little bit about our goals, operational goals. So next slide.
Great, thanks, Katie. So continuing to center you in how we define our work, what inspires us, what goals are we looking for, I'll turn your attention to the headlines on this slide. So oversight, outcomes, and portfolio management. The takeaway as we think about oversight is really about positioning our talented and kind of multi-dimensional team to support intended outcomes, to really serve as a trusted advisor, a thought partner, and to dig in and work in a very specific way based on the investment that the health centers have received from us. When we think about performance outcomes, again, it really is inspiring, perhaps liberating, the idea that we get a chance to understand that compliance is foundational to the work that we do in our office, the work that we do in our bureau, and that we have this chance to really think about outcomes and deliver tailored training and technical assistance. And so that training and technical assistance is done in a way that we describe as locally here in our office, but certainly in partnership with PCAs across the country, with our national training and technical assistance partners. And so it really, again, is about taking care in a multi-pronged approach, health centers, and trying to literally think of everything in terms of how intentional we are in the space of outcomes. The investment portfolio management, I think the headline that I'd like to dig in there is about it being data-driven, and that we're really thinking about performance and the management of the entire country of health centers in this innovation space, accelerating and co-learning between health centers and us. And again, thankful to work with partners across the entire Bureau who are adding additional muscle to the work that, we're more than the sum of our parts. So I will turn to my colleague, Angela Powell, who will talk about her particular office.
Next slide. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Angela Powell. I'm the director of the Office of Health Center Program Monitoring. Our office is comprised of 5 functional areas, and you'll see those listed above. Compliance evaluation and support, health center engagement, program data and risk analysis, technical assistance and assessments, and strategic operations and management. And I call those out because it's important to know that we were very deliberate in how we stood up our office with these functional areas. We have more of the foundational and traditional role of monitoring and support of the health center program requirements. And with that, I liken it to the project officer role, sort of separated, but working together. And I know that this is a little bit of a paradigm for you all. It's a very traditional role for us, but we're trying to do it in an untraditional way. And I think it is important for us to do that so that we can evolve with you all as healthcare and primary healthcare in particular continues to evolve. Again, our purpose is at the bottom, and we focus primarily on promoting and supporting the health center model of care. And the health center model of care for us are those things that make the health center program unique. It's having a patient majority board. It's making sure that people have access to primary care without regard to their ability to pay for those services. And in doing that, we want to optimize organizational performance. We also want to look at improving, working with you to improve primary healthcare outcomes. And certainly overlaying all of that is trying to advance health equity. Next slide. Our performance goals, hopefully these will be, if not familiar to you, something that will align with your thinking of what our role is. We want to focus on efficient assessments and activities. Certainly with our role of monitoring and compliance, that C word that I used to joke about, no one wanted to talk about, but again, is very important, is foundational, and really is what the health center program in many ways is built on. Those program requirements, again, those things that make us unique, that model of care. We want to be able to support you and support the work that you're doing. And in doing that, we know that traditionally, historically, we have looked at health centers in a cookie cutter mode in some respects. And now we're trying to look at this in a more advanced way across the spectrum to make sure that we can meet you all where you are and to help you get to where you want to and where you need to be. We want to look at monitoring strategies, how we engage with you all, making sure that they're streamlined based on risk. So I know some of the health centers want us calling them and some of them don't want us calling them. And we see you all as playing a pivotal role in working with us to help us understand how best we can engage with health centers. And you'll be hearing more about that as we continue to do some pilots with regard to monitoring and reaching out and making sure that folks know who to contact and when to contact them about their health center. Third, we want to identify and utilize program data. We ask a lot of you all, especially in our area and working with the health centers, we have a lot of information just based on our experience of working with the health centers. And instead of just collecting that data or noting that data, we want to take it and do something with it. We want to make sure that for those folks who are having challenges, we can work with them to help them overcome those challenges. We want to make sure that we identify those areas where there may be a trend or something going on so that we can help folks avoid some of those challenges with regard to compliance and help ensure everyone stays in continuous compliance as much as possible. And finally, we want to deploy innovative technical assistance approaches. And that really is based on our experience with health centers, working with you all, also making sure that we utilize that data and experience to develop assistance strategies that are timely, that are effective. And in most cases, we hope they will be proactive in supporting the health centers that we work with. Looking forward to working with you all in a new and different way. You are called new leaders. I'm sure some of you have been maybe new leaders in your position, but not new to the health center program. And we stand ready to work with you as we both work to make sure that folks in health centers in their communities have what they need to continue to do that important work. And so I will turn it over to my next director. And like Tanya, I'm not sure who that is, so I'll say next slide.
And I'm the winner. Good afternoon, everyone. Jen Joseph. I'm the director of the Office of Policy and Program Development. And like my colleagues, really pleased to be with you today to talk a little bit more about our office. So the purpose of OPPD, as we refer to ourselves, is to advance health center program impact and leadership. That includes helping to vision where we need to go and how we can best leverage our policies, our programs, and our resources to maximum effect. On this slide, you can see that we are likewise organized into functional areas. In OPPD, we have 4 areas. Policy is the space where we focus on health center program policy, and the spaces that you're most familiar with probably there are related to the compliance manual, the site visit protocol, scope of project policy, and related resources. This team also does a lot of technical assistance on legislation that has impacts on the health center program and on funding for the health center program. And we, like you, also have accountabilities and oversight. And so this team spends a fair amount of time responding to inquiries from the GAO and the OIG, where they are asking really important questions and helping us learn over time how we can do our work better. Strategic initiatives is the other functional area that's focused on informing and supporting strategy to advance our priorities. They develop tools and approaches and strategies to advance those priorities. Some of those include how to understand needs so that we can better target future resources to areas of greatest need. The Health Center Excellence Framework is something that you might have heard about or may soon hear about in terms of a way for us to collectively think about health center performance. This group also does the formulation of our budget and supports requests for funding that advance our priorities, and also oversee the development of funding opportunities that support capital investments and our loan guarantee program. So if you aren't familiar with the loan guarantee program and you want to learn more about how health centers can leverage that program, we can share more about that with you at another time. The Ongoing Investments Office is the part of our organization that develops the funding opportunities that support service area competitions, And how I refer to sort of the bread and butter of the program, the ongoing support to the areas that the Health Center program funds, our new quality improvement fund, funding to all of you. So to our primary care associations, our national training and technical assistance partners, NAC being one among them, and our health center controlled networks. And this group also oversees the lookalike initial designation review and process. And last but not least is our expansion functional area. And they focus on new funding that expands access to address emerging issues and needs for expansion across the program. And so some examples of those funding opportunities, which we don't have currently, but you've probably heard a lot about, are new access point funding opportunities that help us to expand the footprint of the health centers into areas of high need, service expansion, a recent example of that being our school-based service site funding that we just released, and funding to address emerging priorities. I think the American Rescue Plan is the example extraordinaire that we can talk about there. Next slide. And so these performance goals align with, and to differing degrees, cut across all of our functional areas. Strategic directions is, sort of speaks to that space of where do we need to go in the future and how can we support innovative approaches to advance the health center program. Funding opportunities is exactly what it sounds like. So understanding the directions we need to go, how do we develop funding and related guidance and technical assistance that position health centers for success in achieving intended outcomes. Funding strategies are the different ways that we can maximize our impact and advance health equity, how we target those funds as an example. And program integrity is in part our accountability and how we respond to inquiries from our overseers, and also just modeling excellence in the management and stewardship of federal funds, questions that we're asking every single day so that the health center program can continue to be that model of excellence and a trusted steward of the resources that are provided to us. And then policy is the, I think I spoke about the role of that functional area. And so I think that the takeaway for me is less that you remember any of these things, but that it's really important from where we sit. Nothing we do matters if it isn't translating to impact on the ground. And so it's really critical that our work is grounded in a partnership with you and with health centers, and that you are really important in helping us, especially in the thinking about how do we configure this, think about this, whatever this is, whether this is the direction we need to go or we have direction, and how do we implement that and translate that into resources that are going to make an impact. It's really critical that we understand the range of issues and realities at the state and local, in the state and local context that you represent. And so really want to leave you with the open door and encouragement to take advantage of opportunities, an open invitation to share with us your thoughts and feedback about how we can do better and what health centers need in the areas that you're representing. And so from there, I will pass it on to the Office of Quality Improvement, and I assume Suma is up.
Yes, great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. The purpose of the Office of Quality Improvement is to advance the health center program mission and impact by two things: enabling quality improvement and activating innovation through various program initiatives, training technical assistance, strategic partnerships, and then program evaluation and research. So we try to achieve that purpose through our 5 functional units that you see before you. Our quality unit really focuses on patient-centered medical home, accreditation, care delivery models, care integration, clinical quality improvement, workforce well-being, those variety of topics, clinical research, data and evaluation focuses on UDS, UDS Plus, the health center patient survey, quality recognition badges and quality recognition, of course, program evaluation, and then getting the data and research out. So evaluating the impact of the health center program along access, cost, quality, and supporting some elements of value-based pay and social determinant screening. Our FTCA division runs the FTCA medical malpractice program. They focus on patient safety and risk management, but also the deeming application process. When unfortunately there is a claim, the claims management process. So all there to support you there. Strategic partnerships, you may have some familiarity already. This unit focuses on our national training and technical assistance programs, our primary care associations, health center controlled networks, and TA coordination across a couple of different topics and internally within BIPIC with all of you all, as well as our partners across HRSA and the department. So that's your point of contact there. And then our last and newest functional unit is our Center for Health Center Innovation, and they focus on all of our COVID-19 programs, implementation of the Quality Improvement Fund, optimizing virtual care so far, future a maternal health focused one, and also our prize challenges. So through these 5 functional areas, you see the lead program leads there. Feel free to reach out to me directly or Sue Lynn, my deputy, who couldn't join us today, if you need support in any of these areas. If you can't get me, you're probably better served in most cases by one of the division leadership that's written on the slide, but don't worry, there's a no wrong door approach here. Ask your project officer. If your project officer doesn't know, feel free to contact me directly and we'll do our best to get you where you need to go. Let's jump to the next slide and take a look at what this whole group and those functional units, our goal is in working with you and supporting you at health centers. Our first goal is to enable health center capacity to deliver comprehensive, integrated, patient-centered care by providing data-driven, customer-centered training and technical assistance resources. We want to activate and accelerate innovation, as I mentioned. We want to foster data-driven decision-making and quality improvement. And then finally, develop strategic partnerships and collaborations to advance health center excellence and really live into this notion of a learning health center system. And so we look forward to welcoming you all in your new positions and look forward to working with you to enable quality improvement and accelerate innovation. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Kate, to round us out.
All righty. Thank you so much, Suma. Next, thank you. So I am Kate Mitchell, happy to be here today. I am the Office Director for the Office of Strategic Business Operations, or OSBO, as we like to say for short, because it is a mouthful. Our office's purpose statement reflects our continued focus on design and implementation of systems to support our day-to-day work, as well as internal and external communications, and also using data regularly to enhance not only these 2 areas that are specific to my office, but also using data to inform our work and priorities across the Bureau. So OSBO has both enabling and enterprise functional areas that serve the Bureau, meaning the work that we do can be tailored to fit the needs of a specific office and their work, or can be applied and used uniformly across the entire Bureau. So the folks supporting this purpose are on the slide here. We continue to lead the systems and communications work for the Bureau, but the biggest shift that we've had in the last year, and my office is now leading the Bureau's efforts to advance our ability to make data-informed decisions. Last year, we did hire a Chief Data Officer for the Bureau. This is the CDO for the Bureau, but sits in OSBO because a lot of the data enterprise Bureau level data work is in OSBO. So we hired the CDO, his name's David Spett. You may have seen him on one of the Today with McRae's. He sets the data vision and the strategy and the governance framework forward. In addition to the CDO role, we have a newly established functional area, our data unit, which will largely help bring David's vision to life and really implementation of the strategy and the vision. And so for data, we have teams that are focused on data governance, which is really just applying standards across for our data, data management, which is that infrastructure piece, data analytics at the Bureau level, and then business intelligence, which is really about accessibility to data and performance. We also have communications, and they continue to be responsible for creating and promoting communications content on behalf of the Bureau. So whether it's through the BIPIC website, press releases, social media, or newsletters like the bulletins. We sent one today, and the Primary Care Digest, we also sent it out today. That all comes out of the communication shop. And then finally, our systems folks, they lead the design and implementation of our management information systems for the Bureau's internal operations. You're most likely familiar with our beloved EHB system, as well as Salesforce. We have the online communities, which we established particularly for the COVID programs, and we will be expanding the online communities for some additional engagement in the coming years. We also have the Health Center Program Support, formerly known as the BIPIC Helpline, which houses the BIPIC Contact Forum, which you've heard so much about recently. And that's not to be confused with HRSA's Contact Center. So a lot of work that is going on in OSPO to really support the Bureau as a whole. And we're really just excited to lead the Bureau in these areas. I also want to take a moment to recognize Holly Schumann, the deputy. She has been here probably about 1.5 years now, and Holly has just been, I can't even say enough about Holly, but she has been just essential to getting us to where we are today. So Holly's on the line. Let's go ahead, in the interest of time, move forward to the next slide, please. So these are our office performance goals that align with the work that we do and guide us to achieve those. One thing I do want to highlight here is the ability to use our communications and even data to demonstrate the impact of the Health Center program. It's really the so what of the data and information that you're seeing. You may have noticed a shift in some of our recent press releases. We're really trying to demonstrate the impact of the Health Center program and really talk about that so what. Another example of this is our Health Center Stories webpage. I can put the link in the chat, and really trying to talk about how we are working towards the mission. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Angela and Erna for a brief update on each of their offices. Next slide.
Next slide. We're actually going to talk about BIPIC customer engagement. And several of the questions that we have received during this transition has been about customer engagement and who do I contact, when do I contact them, who's my project officer. And this transition has been put a little bit of a challenge with that. But now that you've heard about the Bureau and the offices, we want to talk to you about this important aspect of our work, and it's our relationship with the Health Center program participants and, in fact, our customer engagement strategy. During this reorganization, recent transformation, a key transition was our change in approach to Health Center engagement. And as we talked earlier in our Health Center program overview, one of the things that has transitioned is the project officer role. And so I think Kate alluded to a bulletin that came out earlier. I know you all might not have had a chance to read it because you've been in the meeting, so I would encourage you to read it. I think someone dropped it in the chat. Thanks, Kate. But don't do it in the meeting. Don't get me in trouble. But it talks specifically about how we have transitioned from solely focusing on being geographically based, how we are taking the previous generalist approach and moving to a more targeted, specialized and functional approach to our work. And as described earlier, the investments office focuses on those targeted grant types, funding and providing support regard to that and looking at performance improvement. And on the Health Center program monitoring side, we focus primarily on compliance with program requirements and assistance around that. So there are a lot of details that I'm glossing over a little bit, but in the interest of time and wanting to save time for questions, would encourage you to read that bulletin, to look at the bullets on this slide to help guide you and help ground you in how we have transitioned the work with the Office of Health Center Program Monitoring and the Office of Health Center Investment Oversight. We will continue to tweak and to work on our processes and our procedures. We need your feedback. We need the feedback from the health centers so that we can continue to improve not only the work that we do, but our partnership and the way we engage with you all. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Erna.
Thanks, Angela. So Angela covered the high points of our transition, and I'll amplify a few points, that being the secret sauce of the Office of Health Center Investment Oversight. And I think this is true for program monitoring, is that it's the relationship between our project officers or investment oversight advisors, as we call them in the investment office, and our health centers. And so our engagement strategy is very much about capitalizing on that secret sauce. We have the benefit of now working across the country. We have the benefit of building, deepening, evolving the relationships we have with health centers across the country. And we really do intend to make good on that promise of the relationship that is difference making. And that really informs how we show up. We welcome the detail for you to read the detail and how those relationships play out in our respective offices, and really do welcome the questions that we'll receive from you as we think it is through your specific questions that we can know best where the points of clarity or amplification need to be made. So with that, I will transition to, we have the smoothest of handoffs in this presentation. And so that is wonderful. I am not entirely clear who's next.
It goes back to Kate.
Kate,
Yeah.
that's excellent.
Yes. So Angela and Erna really provided some good context, from our transformation and, talking about how we are changing how we engage with health centers, really in an effort to enhance our service to you all as well, and really just provide a better customer experience. So with that, the shift from solely geographic-based generalist approach to the specialized approach, I think came with a little bit of growing pains, I'll say, including, like I said, moving away from having a single point of contact to, having a specialized team, a group of SMEs. So we do have project officers. I think you heard Suma say, contact your project officer. So we may not have them in Angela and Erna's offices, but that hasn't changed necessarily in OQI as it relates to the PCAs and cooperative agreements and HCCNs. But what we attempted to do here in this graphic is really try to simplify it for you all. It does seem a little busy now that I'm looking at it again, but we want to say, if you guys have a general inquiry, a question, related to a grant or whatever, just use the BIPA contact form. Using that form helps us to understand what the questions and issues are out in the field. We hope to use that information to track our responsiveness, look at the data, also inform FAQs, knowledge management efforts, TNTA efforts, and just identify trends so we can do something with that information. But we also know and realize that, not all of the questions, and many of them aren't just kind of general, and that they're time sensitive or urgent or nuanced or specific to your, individual group. So for that, we have some instructions here on who to contact or how to contact. So instead of using the contact form, you can email the email boxes down here on the slide. And we also have those in the bulletin. They're not just links, but you can click the actual email addresses and save those. So as Angela mentioned, that special bulletin went out today, has the additional details. We are continuing to make improvements to the design and features of the contact form, as well as associated processes within our Bureau, really to better enhance the customer experience for you all. So with that, I knew this was the last slide. I think that's it. We'll open it up for questions for each of us. I also will say, if you all have feedback on the bulletin or on that graphic, can you please share that with me? Because it really is a continuous improvement process. And so we want to be as clear as possible. And so you can send that feedback directly to me at kmitchell@hrsa.gov.
Thanks, Kate. And I think that we actually want to share the stage with our colleague from the Bureau of Health Workforce. So I think we can turn it over to Sheila to share some thoughts as well before we jump into Q&A.
Sure, and it'll be brief, but welcome everyone, and thanks for having me on. I'm from the Bureau of Health Workforce. I'm a senior advisor in the Bureau of Health Workforce. And so really, we're looking forward to, partnering and always considering BIPIC and health centers, our main partners, one of our main partners. Our work is really centered on the workforce. And so, our whole goal and our whole mission is really to provide a workforce that is able to meet the challenges and provide quality services in underserved communities. The work that you do is very important, and we see you as very critical and important partners for that work. So as we develop the workforce, our goals really are around expanding the workforce, the supply, the distribution of that workforce, having a quality workforce. So a lot of our grant programs, we have about 1.6 billion in FY22 anyway. For FY23, the president's budget is a little bit bigger, but basically it's on education and training and direct service programs. And so, of course, in that training and in that education, you are definitely, health centers are partners for us. We launched the $5.8 million health professions training, education and training initiative with BIPIC and PCAs. And basically that's because we need individuals to train and be educated in the communities where we want them to serve. And so, as your capabilities to provide that education and training increase, so does our reach in terms of being able to get a workforce out in the community. So we have grant programs that cover nursing, behavioral health, primary care, dentistry across the gamut. And so in a number of those opportunities, we really are encouraging health centers to be partners or to be grantees and take on that training. And so we're here. We want to support that education and training that happens at the community level. We know it's important for developing that culturally competent health workforce, a resilient workforce. And so in a number of our investments, those are the kinds of things that we're concentrated on. So look forward to you having a successful, tenure in your positions, and look forward to working with you. So I can give my email. It's spradier, Pradia Williams @hrsa.gov, and we stand ready to be to see you come in maybe for some of the grants and to really work beside you with strengthening the health workforce. Thanks. And I'll be here to answer any questions as well.
So we turn it back over to you, Ryan or Cindy.
Yep, happy to have participants share some Q&A. I know right off the bat, I'll suggest that Sarah, if she's available, come off mute and ask a question about HCCN funding.
Yes, I think this question is for Suma, but I'm not sure. Our state is transitioning into managed care, and when that happens, sometimes there's mergers of organizations. And I just wondered, have you guys ever considered HCCN funding based upon the number of patients that are being served instead of the organizations? Because even though we would be providing, serving more patients, if that happens, there could be less organizations. And so I just wondered if that's something that ever has been considered.
Yeah, happy to take it. Thanks for the question, Sarah. And it's a good one. So you all are, well, maybe you're less familiar. So I'll just table set for all of us. A lot of our funding that Jen's team leads the development of is done with, that goes directly to health centers, is done with a consideration of a per patient, right? To accommodate the volume of patients and whether it's service expansion, supplemental, other kinds of things, right? For our strategic partners who are funded under our training and technical assistance line, the unit of intervention is the health center, not the patients, right? So usually those are and specifically this impacts the HCCN funding, it's done with a number of participating health centers. And it's done because the idea is you're not doing a service to a patient directly, right? It's technical assistance, guidance, a learning collaborative, tools and resources that should, generally speaking, and it's all not always the case, but be pretty resilient across a kind of a one-to-many situation, right? And so I think that's why in that context, the focus has been health centers. We have looked at this. We are currently going to embark soon, shortly, on our next round of 3-year funding for our HCCN. So I think let's kind of go through that process, and we're committed to quality improvement. So as we work through this again, if this issue continues to be one we want to look at, you'll know that for the whole lot of you, that we really do look at taking your feedback as we develop our programs, and we'll certainly invite that again as we have an opportunity to do the next rounds of funding.
Great, thank you so much.
Elena, Rhode Island, I have a question.
Yes, hi, thank you so much for that overview. It was very helpful. I am actually one of the, I think I can still say I'm pretty new. I'm in my 6th month, and so the question may be reflective of the newness. So I do notice with notices of funding opportunities come up, but the time between the announcement and, say, our PCA's ability to apply or to support a health center to apply is too short. Do you have any recommendations in terms of how might we know that NOFO is coming? Is there something I should be looking for to anticipate the NOFOs so I'm a little bit more prepared?
I'll take that one. That's a great question. So we forecast what is coming based on the president's budget. And so I can tell you right now, you can anticipate a funding opportunity, and this is all contingent upon actual appropriations, whether we will award the dollars, but we are preparing a funding opportunity for primary care HIV prevention, for a third core cohort of those folks, and for early childhood development to increase developmental screening and follow-up. And so those are two of the spaces where we are anticipating additional dollars because those are in the president's budget. And so beyond that, we can't tell you what we don't know. And so, and then some of the things we suspect we have to actually sort of wait to play out. And so part of the challenge that you experience, we share with you. And so what we aim to do, and we are virtually, I think in rare circumstances, we are not able to do it, but to have funding opportunities on the street, as we refer to it, for at least 90 days, that's the standard that we try to work from. And sometimes we are just put into the situation where it's just not possible. And so cancer screening was one example of that. And appropriations came late in the year. And fortunately, we had queued up because we had signals from the Hill, from at least one part of the Hill, that this was an interest. And so we were actually much better prepared than we might have been, and still understanding it's a squeeze. And so if we got appropriations on October 1st, it would be a different situation. And that's, so we try to work within the constraints that we have, prioritizing the time that you all have to complete the applications, and then, you know, navigating the realities of the steps that we have to go through on our side, and particularly if they're competitive funding opportunities, there's just a baked in timeline that we need to accommodate to have that objective review and to go through those processes.
Okay, thanks.
Hey.
That's actually very helpful. Thank
Sure.
you.
Hey, Jen, this is Joe Perley. Good to see you and the Bureau team. Appreciate you all being here today. You know, I have to ask, so this seems very new, the early childhood education piece, screenings, so on and so forth. So would likely require some development work, some relationship building. Can I assume that the Bureau is going to set aside some resources for PCAs to start building those relationships at the statewide level? And didn't intend to ask this question, but Senator Blunt called me when the appropriations was wrapped up and said he put $2 million extra in there for TA purposes, and didn't know if you all had a plan for that yet. Thanks.
So lots of questions in that question. So in terms of, I'm going to channel Suma and I'm going to see if she nods along with me. So in terms of the PCA resources, I don't think we have plans for additional PCA resources for specifically to align with that new funding opportunity, but the flexibility of the cooperative agreement sort of have baked in your support of health centers to address emerging priorities, new funding opportunities, and those kinds of things. And so to the extent you all need to recalibrate work plans to accommodate the reality in any given year, I know that's not the ideal, but I think that is the real that we're working within. We are thinking through our options for that additional $2 million and anticipate that we may think about that as a one-time investment. And so we're still working out the details of what that could look like over time, but definitely have that $2 million on the radar for an option for us to complement other investments and other priorities that we have in the mix. And I'll see if Tanya or Suma want to add, or any of my other colleagues want to add anything. Or correct.
No, 100% what Jen said. We are intentionally building in space to accommodate emerging priorities. And so I think insofar as you will see that in your cooperative agreements, you have the flexibility to do that. One just nuance, Jen said early childhood education and early childhood developmental screening. She has both of those on her mind because she is tasked with school-based health. The particular opportunity is developmental screening, which is something health centers are already familiar with, right? So it's in that context, not to say we shouldn't be reaching across different sectors, because that's also important, but just for the immediate relief, this is really around how can health centers do more? Because there is a concern that our patient populations are not getting screened as much and connected with the services that they need.
Thank you, Suma. So thank you for reading into my brain. I'm in school services mode. Yeah, developmental screening, general primary care, but how do we do more of that important service?
We have a question from Lather and Woodard in the chat. Is there any coordination with CMS early childhood education?
So yes, we have had conversations with CMS, with CDC, with other external stakeholders who have expertise in working with health centers in this space. And to my previous point, like, I mean it when I say help us. So if you hear us saying developmental screening, let's close the gap, let's do more, let's close the gaps, let's integrate this in, let's think about this aspect of care delivery differently than in the past, so that it is more robust. What are the challenges? What are the things that absolutely need to be in there? What are the things, oh my gosh, do not do this? What are the successes that you've had or health centers in your states and regions have had that are really important for us to be aware of? Invite input like that at any point in time. It can be an email. We can set up a phone call with you. What we can't do is say, tell us what to do and give us the list, and then we'll go do that. But input that you have that we can listen to and then put into the framework that we're operating within in terms of our authority and direction and all those things is really welcome and actually incredibly helpful. And soon, because the other thing to take away is that it's written. So you're just hearing about it, but it is already drafted. It takes a year in an ideal world for something to get on the street and get funded. And every time you're seeing something that is less than a year from the award date, we are squeezing. We're squeezing somewhere in a less than ideal way. And so we do anticipate releasing this funding opportunity in this fiscal year for funding in fiscal year 23. And so if you have feedback, please you can jjoseph@hrsa.gov, and I'm happy to pull together some folks to get your feedback so that we can incorporate that in. But don't wait 3 months.
Yeah,
Don't
and I
wait
will just
a month.
add that, there was a question about how do we envision the role of PCAs and HCCNs and frankly, national partners. There really is an environmental surveillance and providing feedback on what's happening in the health center context, whether it's technology or state health policy or otherwise. So we know that you all are tracking on different legislative actions, things that are happening, prevalent issues for your health centers. Be in communication with us regularly about this so we have those insights as we get opportunities to shape things to support health centers. It is well informed by your regular feedback about the needs of health centers. And so wanted to be really clear, that is an expectation of our work together in our cooperative agreement, that we place a high value on that regular surveillance information and feedback on our work with health centers.
And I'll just make one last comment to emphasize what Suma just said. When you're talking regularly every month with your project officers in strategic partnerships, they are actively culling that information together, that recognizance, that intel from the ground, and regularly putting into what we call internal pulse reports. That information is shared regularly across the entire leadership team, across BIPIC, all the way down through all the managers and every team. So do know when you're talking about things, it is going directly into that intel chain all the way in the organization and has become very seasoned in how we do that together. So just want you to know that.
Great. Any other questions for our HRSA partners? All right, with that, I'll turn it back over to HRSA for the next portion of the slide.
Okay, I think this is our time to transition. What is, I'm looking to Tanya, I think we're done, right? With
these might be our appendix slides. So if you want to
Okay.
know more and read more, there's detail
Okay.
for you all to have. But I think this is the portion where the office leadership will buy out. Thank you all for your time and give you the time and space to meet with your direct project officer and strategic partnership leadership team. So thank you all. It was wonderful to meet you all.
right.
Thanks,
And I think
Aurora.
Natalia is going, thank you so much for being with us. I think Natalia is going to lead us off on this segment and introduce the folks who are going to be talking with you.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Tracy. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natalia Drew, and I am the proud team lead of the PCA Emergency Preparedness Team. I think that I've had the privilege of having some form of communication with each of you, and even more especially with our mentors that are with our CEOs who are serving as your mentors right now. So what we're going to do in this portion, it's really going to be a little more laid back. We're going to, we asked our partners, Jen and Cindy, to send you all some questions, 4 particular questions that we want to get your feedback on and offer the opportunity to kind of address those questions if they resonate with you. Before we get to the questions, each of us as a part of the staff of SP, we're going to introduce ourselves because we want you all to put a face with a name. Some of you may have already had face-to-face meetings with your project officer, but I think it's just also important because we work as a team. And so I think it's important that you get to know all of the players in our division and how we support each other to support you. So I'm going to start with my team, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Lieutenant Commander Janelle Parham. So I will, I'm going to punt, and then each team member can just kind of introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Commander Toby Mans Royal.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Natalia mentioned, my name is Toby Mans Royal, and I have the privilege of being the project officer for most of Region 4, one in Region 8, and all of Region 9. And again, it's my pleasure to be here and serve as your project officer.
Thank you. Dr. Jennifer Keyser-Bryant. You're on mute.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is so good to see you. Am I muted? Can you hear me? Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Keyser-Bryant, and I have the privilege of serving as project officer across several regions. My states include Alaska, Arkansas, hi Lanita, I see you're on, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, hi Joe, Kentucky, Nebraska, New Jersey, New York, Oklahoma, I see Cade and Sarah on, Texas and Wyoming. And it's good to have the opportunity to see those of you with whom I do not have regular interaction and those with whom I do.
Mr. Michael Weaver.
Thank you, Natalia, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Weaver, and I'm a project officer currently supporting DC, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Oregon, the Northwest Regional, and all of Region 5, but I just transitioned away from Illinois. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Mavis Stevens.
Thank you, Natalia. I am Mavis Stevens, and I have the privilege of covering across the regions also, and I cover Georgia, Alabama, bi-state, Massachusetts, Maine, New Mexico, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Washington, Montana, and I'm transitioning currently Connecticut and Rhode Island.
Let's see. Ms. Gladys Kate.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Natalia. My name is Gladys Kate, and I am the project officer of one of the PCAs, and that is the PCA in Puerto Rico. I am the new kid on the block. I'm pretty new on my role as project officer for a PCA. So thank you, and it's nice to meet you virtually. Thank you.
Hey, I would be remiss if I did not turn it over to Ms. Stephanie Christ, who has really stepped in for us this past year to support us as we've had shifts in our staffing. So Stephanie, introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, my name is Stephanie Christ. I'm a former PCA PO, had the absolute joy of supporting the PCA team for a few months, but I've transitioned those PCAs. But the main reason why you all, I think, would be interested in some of the work I do is I'm also the core for the peer learning teams contract, which is sort of like being a PO for a PCA. That's kind of what a core is. And they have some really neat things to offer new CEOs, including coaching.
Thank you. Also, I forgot to you all know her, but just to introduce my director again, is Tracy Orloff. And Tracy, would you just like to give just a little more intimate hello to our newbies?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I really enjoyed our time with you today, and we're always so privileged and happy to work with all of you. You do tremendous work on the ground every single day, and all that you do helps us do our work better. So whatever way we can support, help you learn about new ideas, things that are both pain points and those things that you think we can help move faster, we're happy to be your partner in doing that. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy. One last PO, my newest PO, he's not here today, and that's Mr. Bryant Godine. So saying hello on his behalf. And so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Lieutenant Commander Janelle Parham.
Thank you, Natalia. Hello to everyone. As Natalia said, I'm Lieutenant Commander Janelle Parham. I'm the team lead for the HIT HCCN team. And so I'm going to go around and introduce some of the POs who are available today. I will say that Melanie and Bethany were not available for today. And I also wanted to give special greetings. I see several leaders for organizations that I previously had in my portfolio when I was a PO, and it's great to see you all. Our newest project officer is Thelma. Thelma, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Thelma Ihanichuku, and I am the newest member of the team. This is my 3rd week, and I'm glad to be here.
And we're really excited to have Thelma on the team with us. Thank you. Moving on to Laura.
Hi, everybody, and my apologies. My camera interface worked yesterday morning, didn't work yesterday afternoon. Thought I had it fixed. Clearly, I don't. So I can see you, but you can't see me. I do feel like it's kind of like romper room. I see South Carolina. I see Arkansas. So I'm one of the HCCN project officers. I'm actually a nurse by training. I work with many of the Region 4 HCCNs. But I also work with Arkansas and with the Dakotas, and Wyoming works with the Dakotas, and then also Utah, and have worked with other HCCNs in the past as well. So welcome, I'm glad that you're here. Thanks so much. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Laura. I'm gonna move on to Alita.
Hello, everyone. I am Alita Jaree Carter. I am a project officer on the HIT team and work with HETNs as well. I have 12 HETNs within my portfolio that include Colorado, Virginia, Georgia, Massachusetts, Ohio, Missouri, the Coalition of Orange County, 2 networks that are housed in Pennsylvania, Alaska, and the Council of Community Clinics in San Diego, California.
Thank you, Alita. I'd like to give Anthony an opportunity to say hello if he's available.
Yes, thank you, Janelle. My camera may not be working. I think it's on, but you can't see my face for some reason. So you guys, welcome. My name is Anthony Jordan. I'm one of 2 deputy directors here in Strategic Partnerships, and I work very closely with Janelle and the HCCN team on everything health IT related. So thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. Natalia, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And also, I just want to add a special shout out for our other Deputy Division Director, Commander Sean Chapman. Some of you may have also seen him on correspondence. So just wanted to give that acknowledgement. He's not able to be here for this session. So when we were really looking at what to do with this session, one, we wanted it to be more open-ended and conversational. And so as I stated earlier, we had our partners send you all for questions. And we're going to just kind of have an open-ended facilitated discussion. And that's going to be led by my colleague, Mr. Michael Weaver.
Thank you, Natalia. And as Natalia said, we wanted this session to be more informal, to have, allow you all to have a chance to talk to even more than just your project officer if you've talked to them. I know that you all have heard a lot from the different offices across BIPIC within the last hour, including Suma, our director of our Office of Quality Improvement, and from Tracy as well. But as the questions that you were sent out earlier, the first question is, what information would you like to know about strategic partnerships and the role of project officers? Now, trying to figure out what's the best way, just to raise your hand and I'll call on you, or you can jump in. Okay, so I think maybe the best way just to raise your hand and then I'll just call on you. Does everyone know the three teams that we have? Everyone know the three teams that we have within SP and how we work together?
I'm sorry, can you just, what is SP again? Oh, strategic plan.
Yeah, strategic partnerships. We used to be, the strategic. No, we used to be the strategic partnership division, but now we refer to just as strategic partnerships.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
You all can also put questions in the chat as well. Or if it's a question that you have that isn't one of the 4 questions that we sent to you, please feel free to ask those questions as well.
Totally.
Or if you don't have a question, if you just have a comment, or if you just have something to say, please feel free to do that.
Okay. Lathrop?
Everyone knows I'm going to have something to say to get us started. I don't like silence, so and it probably has nothing to do with your question, but it's my question. All these years, I'm still a little confused in terms of project officers. Not so much, and I hope you're saying project officers in general, not PCA and just HCCN. Is that, can I ask about grantee project officers, or is it just PCA and HCCN?
Ms. Woodard, ask your question. We'll see if we can answer it. And if we're not able to answer it, then we will send it to our colleagues.
Okay, well, I was framing it in a way that it'll come back to our PCA and HCCN project officers. How are you looking at in terms of, especially if it's our role as PCAs, HCCN to provide support, training, technical assistance to the grantees, and for the PCAs to any HRSA grantee, when the POs of those grantees are not feeding us information to help us to know what is really going on until the last minute. We used to have that process called, okay, Joe, you old enough to remember this. I think it was PPP. It was, the different stages, and the primary, we would end up knowing when the center was about to fall off the cliff. Okay, if we are to do our jobs, what is the relationship with the PCA, HCCN POs, and the health center grantee POs?
Well, I'll take a stab, and then wanting of anybody else on the team, please chime in. Right now, as you just saw in the past hour, they really laid out a new infrastructure in terms of how our bureau is running. And so right now, internally, we're really trying to foster those strategic partnerships internally so that we can all be on the same page in terms of how we all will serve the health centers. We're also in the process of kind of revamping and reimagining, for lack of a better term, the State of the State calls, because that was a venue that we utilized to bring on our partners who oversee the health center grants along with us to really just sit down and have some dialogue. As the leadership has said always, please, if there are ideas and things that you all may have in terms of how we better fortify relationships, at least, outward appearing, please let us know. But our role really is to serve you. And so whatever we can do to fortify that relationship, we will. And even though there is a change in the paradigm, we still maintain this traditional way that project officers interact with grantees. So I don't think I really answered your question.
Yeah, I know. I see Alina's hand up, but if I can, Toby is my project officer, and we tried to do something like when we would meet with Toby as the PCA, she would try to get some of the grantee POs on the call, which was really going to be helpful for us so we can hear and they can hear that, oh, this grantee is really having an issue. Maybe I really don't know about it. And it's not sort of a policing thing. It is how do we support those grantees, but we have to work together. And if we aren't talking, and if the grantee POs don't feel comfortable talking to us because I was told that the health center is the grantee and not me, so they didn't have to talk to me. So I was like, well, can the POs talk? But if we want to strengthen not only what we're doing, but the health centers, we've got to have that communication there.
Yes.
And don't wait till the last minute and share them, because catching those issues early is going to make it easier than wait until, some of these centers are about ready to close their doors.
Yeah, and I think just being, as Tanya was talking about earlier, she was talking about customer service. And we do look at it as a partnership with you all. And so as they are working through their reorg and the restructure, we are still, from our due diligence, when something like that comes up, we can identify who the listed project officer is, and we can have that conversation with them. And they may or may not bring the PCA, but you all have had that voice, and we will share your voice and your concerns to the actual PO, and they can raise that up internally through their avenues. But and then we can get kind of like let you know, be aware of what's happening on the back end. But we do have those mechanisms to have that to be your voice internally as well.
And I just want to say real quick, what you're referring to, and you're referring to the state calls that we have. And so our team is working internally. I think I've shared with most of my portfolio, if I didn't, my neglect, that we're working on revising and revamping that so that we can have, hopefully include certain BIPIC staff that would be appropriate to meet exactly what you're stating and some of the other things that other PCAs are mentioning, that we can have as that collective venue, if you will, for us to have that cross communication and asking of questions and getting the best clarity at it. So all I can say for right now is please stay tuned. Again, we're working on that because we do see value in that, and you all have expressed that value, and we plan on upholding that. So Natalia, if you want to add anything just to close that.
No, I think that both you and Michael eloquently wrapped it up and answered the question that I didn't quite answer.
and I see Tracy, when I go to Elena. I know Tracy have.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we continue to value and structure ourselves around bi-directional communication. So just like you do, you're communicating with your health centers, you're communicating with us, we're doing the same thing internally. And so we also recognize that not every state PCA has the same relationship with all its health centers. Some, are in contact with all of them. Some aren't with that many because there's issues. Some, it's a few here and there. So we recognize that and we leave room for all that. So if any of you are in a state where you don't have consistently the best relationship across all of your health centers, that's important for your PO to know. Because what we can do is we can reach out to our office colleagues and know that about a certain state and inform them. If you hear of things, let us know so that we can mitigate, we can stay ahead of it, we can think about TA needs strategically with you. So, and I think as the PCA team, as Toby and Natalia have been talking about, are reimagining the state of the state and trying to make it more effective, is they're going to be using it as a just-in-time kind of situation. So if there are places where it would really benefit the partners to talk, we can make that happen. So just want you to know, we definitely think bi-directional, and it's case by case, but it's also where you think you want to have us know, well, we're not sure if we're always the best communicator. So if you can help us, we're happy to do that. So we don't do one size fits all. So.
Okay, thank you. Elena, did I say your name right?
Yes, thank you. And I'll just second, I had not even thought about that concept that Lathan raised about having some communication or connection to the health center POs. That's a great idea. So I'll just second it. But my question had to do with the a comment that someone had made earlier about, I think it was you, Tracy, that the information that we share on the monitoring reports goes into this sort of intelligence framework. And so one, I'm curious if you can give me a little bit more information on what type of information is very valuable, because we fill out our reports, but it's often a listing of activities. And so I hadn't thought about it going into this pulse piece. And then just added to that is if you could explain about the recent change in that reporting format, and maybe what's behind the change, what we should be doing differently because of the change. And just a shout out to Mavis. She's been very helpful to me as a new person. So thank you, Mavis.
Yes, Elena. And you want me to do it now? I can explain for you, since it came after our monitoring call for this month. So as explained before, we're always trying to find the best ways to gather the information so that our monitoring calls can be more conversational and can get details that are not included in the written agenda notes. But the recent change has to do with the information we're collecting pertaining to the supplemental funding for workforce and HPET. And if you notice in that section, that's where the details are, just further explaining the numbers in terms of the health centers who have prepared their workforce document and those who have not done so at all, and who participated in the RTAT versus your complete numbers. And particularly for you all in Rhode Island, you all only had 5 health centers that actually participated in your RTAT versus your 8 health centers. So your numbers will primarily most likely be based on your 5 that are actively participating, not excluding the other 3, but it's helpful information as we're sharing that with our colleagues in BHW, that they are aware of that.
So I also would like to kind of touch on just some of the intel. Information that we look for outside of what you would put in a progress report or application are things that really impact the health centers within your state. Things like, for example, just Medicaid expansion, if that's something new and it's happening, if there was something that was happening in the states that was where health centers are struggling to kind of get certifications or whatever that is that's going to impact a health center, or even positive things like newly formed collaborations or relationships that you've developed to support health centers on the ground, or you've done something with another PCA, or you had a great connection with one of our national training and technical assistance partners. So it's really us hearing information on the ground. Like a lot of you have given us feedback on the structural changes, the feedback that we within our bureau. So the information that you give to us, we move that information up to the leadership so that they can hear firsthand what you're hearing from the health centers and how it's impacting you, impacting them. So it's really an opportunity to gather information that if we're just talking to you just only about a work plan, or we just only reading the application, that doesn't give us a full Monty of what is happening in your state. What is your landscape? How are the health centers existing and thriving and growing or not in your state? So that's pretty much why we ask questions, or we take down the information that you give us about what's happening in your state, because it's important to know. It impacts everything. And so as our leaders are guiding our program, they need to know what's happening. And so that report and that intel, it's appreciated and at times needed. I hope that addressed your question, Elena.
Let me just, if I may just add a
Yes.
real world example of what's going on in most states now. Almost every state that I talk with, and I know that my colleagues are talking with, one of the primary concerns is what is going to be the impact of the ending of the public health emergency on the continuation of funding for persons who are Medicaid eligible. Now, there are some states with which I'm working that the state is really vigorously informing the Medicaid eligible individuals about what the impact is going to be, what the time frame is. They may have set up different cohorts. There's another couple of states that are sending out a snail mail, and that's the extent of the information. Two very different approaches. And so what we're looking at is not only what the state is doing, but how are the PCAs filling that gap to inform individuals who will be impacted. There are some PCAs that are very much serving as the spokespersons, informing the clients and informing the health centers, filling in a gap that otherwise would not be filled, making sure that clients are aware of what the changes are going to be and how those changes are going to impact on their access to health services. That's just one very current example of how the intelligence that you provide to us then impacts on the type of information that we can feed to our leadership, and perhaps they can look at it from a different policy as well as programmatic perspective.
And I also like to add that our sister partners for the HCCNs, our colleagues, they're also collecting that intel as well. So it's not just about PCAs, it's about any of the organizations that we serve, that we want our ears to remain on the ground so that we can lift up realistic information that is happening with the health centers.
And Natalia, I wanted to add or reinforce an important point that Jennifer made in terms of the information that you share. So you're having a conversation with your particular PO, whether it's PCA, HCCN, but as they speak to each other, we're able to identify trends. So as we have the cohort of POs for the PCAs or the HCCNs, or maybe both, we can start to see trends as the information is shared and we put it into a reporting format, and then we can use that trend to drive technical assistance for you all as you all are creating technical assistance for your organizations.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay. Do you all have any specific questions about supplemental funding?
Michael, we do have a question in the chat from Sharon. I can either read that, or Sharon, would you like to bring your question forward?
Sure. It's just, it's my newness in not knowing what to expect or what sort of the process is. But we had, as the HCCN, a discussion with our program officer, project officer a while ago about, it wasn't a while ago, I don't want to make it sound like it was a really long time ago, but a couple of weeks ago, around sort of changing the scope of our project that we have under the ARPA grant. And she was, fine with our changes, and we submitted sort of a side-by-side change and then a final document to her. I'm just wondering how we know if it's received sort of full approval, like, can we move forward? Or is her sort of telling us this all sounds good, really all the approval that we need?
So I guess I can start the conversation on that one. So part of it is going to depend on the type of request that you're putting in. If it's a rebudgeting, if it's a change, say for a project director, there are certain changes that have processes that will actually change the notice of award. That could be the information that would let you know that it was approved. Some approvals will not necessarily trigger something in EHBs, but there will be, you should have a formal recognition from your project officer that the process is complete. So it's a little specific to exactly which process you're speaking about, but there is always a formal conclusion within the EHBs as to whether or not something is closed or accepted.
Thank you. Yeah, and this was not something that required a budget
Right.
change. The percent change wasn't great enough to warrant changing the categories. I just wasn't sure what the process was.
For something like that, that's I don't want to say informal, but it doesn't have to go through that prior approval process. We have it documented and it is in our system, but it doesn't need a prior approval. If you in your project officer have come to an agreement about whatever the changes are, then it would be approved. If it wasn't, then your project officer would tell you.
And if you're still waiting for confirmation, Sharon, just reach back out to your project officer and Janelle, and they'll be able to confirm whether or not your changes to your ARPA project plans were approved or not. It's a very simple process for us.
We have our monthly monitoring call tomorrow, so I have it on the agenda. I just wondered if there was sort of a formal process. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you, Janelle. And just circling back to the second question, do you all have any specific questions about supplemental funding? Guess not. But if you do, just let us know. And
Michael, is this the supplemental funding issue that I raised earlier? That I'm not sure I know what the supplemental funding.
You were talking about like some of the new upcoming potential, but now I think we were talking about more workforce. You have, ending the HIV epidemic.
Gotcha.
Those, yeah.
And I think just to put a pin in it, the reason why that's important for both, more so for PCAs, more so than HCCNs, is that the PCAs in the TA you provide across the board, you're usually supporting various supplementals for grantees, workforce, EHE. Those are kind of natural ones where there is specific funding that you have, whether it be ongoing or one time, are the all the ARP funding, the COVID related funding, that is one time, but it's for a long period of time. And so that's considered supplemental as well as a wraparound to the TA support you're putting around the health centers who have their own funding. But we want to make sure that it's that one to many and you're helping them be as efficient as possible on the ground with what they're doing. So it's that kind of supplemental that is a typical thing that some of your funding helps support.
Okay. So how can we, as either division or from our team's perspective or PO, support you in your new role?
Lathan and I can't speak because we're not new.
But we will speak anyway. So. Why the newbies? Oh, Alina, you want to go ahead? Okay, because I was like, and I'll call y'all newbies. I apologize. I'm old enough I can say that. As my 96-year-old mom says, I can say anything I want. I want to kind of go back, Michael, to what you said earlier, which really made me think of PCAs the same as health centers with the supplemental funding, be it workforce or whatever, when it's one time, and really the COVID dollars come in mind with me, it gave us money to do activities that some of those activities are we still going to have to do without the money, which, I've been in government a long time, been working with health centers. It's like, oh my gosh. So how do we incorporate those services without the money anymore? Because there is a need. I probably don't want to hear this, but for instance, I get in trouble all the time. We actually at our PCA, because when the pandemic first hit, you know how we were all having problems with PPEs, when we found a way around it, and I end up with one of my staff being the procurement officer, and I figure out how to get PPEs in and Homeland Security not taking it. So we did the bulk purchasing thing, and we thought, okay, it's over with now. we move it on. My centers had another thought with that. Okay, and when money that's used for, one-time dollars, but this activity is going to be ongoing. I think all PCAs need to think, this is not the first time, but how do you continue those needed services in the absence of dollars? And I may be the only one thinking like that, which is okay.
Ms. Wood, I think it's a sustainability question. And with government funds, there's always that caveat that they may not be guaranteed. And so in receiving funds and looking at your strategic planning, in terms of the outlook, the projections that you make for your organizations, there also has to be some room that, okay, if once this one-time funding is completed, how will we continue this? The beautiful thing about having a cooperative agreement that there is a little flexibility and agility in terms of how you can kind of redirect some of the scope of some of your services. A lot of what was happening within COVID or EHE workforce, we already have those standard categories within your base funding where a lot of those activities can be absolved.
Yeah, like we had behavioral health a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
The integration piece. I think one of the main things, and so when we were talking about how we can support you all in your new role, it goes back to kind of what you were talking about too, Elena, is the main thing is building that trust between you and us, because you advocate for your health centers to us and throughout our bureau, but we advocate for you all, right? Mm-hmm. And so we try to be your voice for all your concerns, your health center concerns, and we move all of that information up. So the biggest thing is how we can support you all is developing that trust and that partnership and allow us to be your voice internally.
And the only thing I would add to that, I think what would be helpful, and this overview has been very useful in just understanding the focus areas of the Bureau. But if we could be reminded at our regular calls, and I know we're getting a new project officer, so we'll be able to work this out with him, but a reminder of the HRSA's or the Bureau's primary focus areas, just, to use that time as a reorientation back, because, in between the 4 weeks that we have the calls, we're all running and doing our day-to-day things. So I think that would be helpful, and to the extent that changes sometimes too.
Well, that's a great segue into our last question, because it was like, what is your understanding of the outcomes that we're looking for or we expecting when we do have our monthly calls? And I think where you were talking about earlier, if we just send out a guide to kind of help you put down and list your activities that you have in your work plan, as opposed to other information that you can provide, and that can kind of like have a jumping off point for those conversations, So I didn't really want to answer the question, but what are your understanding? What are your understanding of the monthly calls? And now, but since we've had this conversation today, any other, thought processes on like where we are right now, or how you all think that we can be better at our monthly calls with you?
For us, it's been very helpful when Dr. Bryan, as directs us to other states that might have experience that they can share regarding changes or things that we have going on. That's been very helpful to us.
Thanks, Sarah.
I'm going to ask a more direct question off of Michael's, and that is your comfort level with speaking with your project officer about your challenges and allowing them to provide TA directly on the call.
Mm-hmm. definitely. Thanks. Okay. Any other questions or any feedback, any comments?
Actually, I want to piggyback
What?
on Lieutenant Commander Parham's comment. I know at times, sometimes you can be feeling a little reticent about sharing with the funder. You know, we don't want to, and I've been on the ground and worked in health centers and different environments that grant funding and cooperative agreement funding. So I know how it feels to sit on the other side and be like, oh, we don't want to tell them, we don't want to do this, we don't want to do that. But in order for us to better serve you, we have to know what's going on. Because there probably may be a solution, a way for us to help you work that out. But if you're not communicative and not tell us, you know, then we can't help you, we can't support you. And so that relationship is really important. You take it very seriously. It's important, as I'm piggybacking on what Michael said, because you serve the health centers, but we serve you. And so anything we can do to help within reason to be able to help and support you is really important, that you communicate with us so that we can support you.
As you and Michael have both been talking, I keep thinking about Michael's word that he hates to use, and that's monitoring. And having served as a compliance officer, there is a difference in the partnership and in the touch base that we try to establish with you in each engagement that we had, and the hat that I wore as a compliance officer, where I had this checklist and yes, that was done. No, that was not done. Yes, this was done. That's not the kind of relationships that any of us have or want to establish. And we're hoping that maybe Michael is right. Maybe we need to think about the language that we're using, because language can sometimes speaks volumes. So Michael was my mentor when I came a few years ago, and he keeps saying, we aren't monitors. We touch base and we're partnerships. So maybe we, on our end, we need to kind of adopt that, as we say it, but sometimes that M word still pops up.
And I would say to all the newbies here, there's a big difference now with the project officers now versus what we had before. We used to say all they wanted to do was to get us. They were policing us. That's how the grantees felt. And we didn't feel it was a partnership. And I think it is important with the words that you use. I like the word that you're here to support us. And what I usually tell the new centers too in our state, they want to see you succeed. Because if you fail, they're gonna make them look bad. When they hear that, they're like, oh, okay. Because I think there is a concern of dealing with the federal government and showing everything. I don't care which grantee you are. So I think it is, how do we, whether you say trust, but show that, build that relationship that it is looked at more positive. I mean, Toby, pick on her. We don't care. We tell dirty laundry everything because we know she's going to be there to say, okay, let's see how we're going to fix this, as opposed to trying to report us or anything like that. And I'm not saying she report us in terms of the negative piece. It's always a, how do we work through this? So for all the newer PCA, ACCN staff, it's a big difference now. And I would say to the Bureau, yes, Michael, it is the words you use. And so I would say, if any avenue you can, we're here to support you because we want you to succeed. And if they hear that, I think they react differently.
I agree, Ms. Woodard. This is reciprocity here. We need for you to do what you do because you do it best. I live in Laurel, Maryland. I don't know what's truly going on in South Carolina. We need for you to tell us what's happening so that we know how to support you, that we know how to fortify these relationships. And even if it's okay, maybe we need to contact somebody in the Bureau of Health Workforce, or maybe we need to, get a contact in the Federal Office of Rural Health Policy. It's important that you know that we're here to serve you and to support you. And, also, and be honest with you. If it's something we don't know, we're not going to blow smoke up you and tell you something that's not true. And if it's something we don't know, we'll do our best to try to find out and get you the answer. And if there are no answers, we'll be honest enough with you to say, don't have an answer for that. So it is important for us in being strategic partners that we value that partnership with you all. And it's most important in terms of our vision and mission within our unit and across the Bureau as well.
And Natalia, I'd also like to add that, we're also a force to help support you as a cohort by making connections. So when you're having the conversation with your project officer and maybe you're working with a new platform, or you're thinking about a new platform or something else, and we know, maybe we'll ask our other colleagues, maybe we know ourselves someone who is a subject matter expert in that, that's an opportunity for us to make the connection for you. But reinforcing, we want you to share that information with us so that we can provide you the assistance, and not waiting until it's time for you to turn in a report or something like that. But just in the everyday conversations that we're having with our calls, or if you reach out for something specific, know that those are all support opportunities.
And also on the flip side of that, if it's something we're not doing right, if it's something that, if messaging is, confusing, I know there have been times in the past where I may have sent a message and it may have been confusing, and I come right back and I apologize and I get the messaging right. So we're also humble enough to receive whatever feedback that you all have for us, because we can't serve you if we're not doing our jobs efficiently. So we also welcome that feedback as well. And that relationship building, that comes with meeting, that comes with time, that comes with discussion. So it will happen because we're invested in making it happen. And so that's where that reciprocity comes in. And if we're both invested in really fortifying these relationships, it will happen organically.
I'm going to turn it back over to,
I just want to say one.
Go ahead, Toby, I'm sorry.
Real quick, I like what Sarah said. It is you think that we're coaching you, you also coach us, because you give us information that we don't know already, and it helps us to funnel that information up to leadership and keep their situational awareness. So, I mean, I hope you all receive that well, that like Tracy said earlier, everything is bi-directional. You help us, we help you, vice versa. It's just a reciprocity, as Natalia said too. I'm listening to keywords.
I know we're at time, so I'm turning it back over to.
That'll be me. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You, okay.
And thank you to our HRSA partners. Very informative. Thank you for fielding questions. Should anyone else have questions, please get them to me. I'll be happy to pass those along to our HRSA colleagues, ensuring that that answer is posted in the NautiPod community for everyone. In light of time, if anyone needs to drop off, feel free. But I will take a quick second and cover some closing details for our session today. Prior to those details, anyone within the New Leader Institute participants or mentors have any questions about this session or future sessions? All right. All right, well then in closing, again, I appreciate everyone's time today. Again, thank you for participants from HRSA for the great information. Again, should anyone have questions, please feel free to get those to me. For participants and mentors, please, as usual, complete the session evaluation. We want to make sure that your feedback informs the future of our sessions. And NautiPod, the what, so what now is helpful to engage your fellow participants in conversations about what you're learning, how you plan on using that for your organization. Continue to benefit from the Nautopod community with check-ins and peer questions. And we will see everyone here June 9th. That's Thursday, 2 to 4 p.m. for our next session, Creating Lasting Partnerships Among Health Center Supporting Organizations. With that, I'll close our time today. Appreciative of everyone's involvement. Should you have any questions, always reach out anytime. Have a good day. Thank you.